just based on
Okay.
that.
All right. That's fine. So just to give everyone the quick overview, I'm sure we all know this, but just so that we're all on the same page. There are several types of buffs in the game, and depending on what kind of buffs you have, will determine what kind of condition it works in and stuff like that. So the first one is what I call vanilla stats or vanilla buffs. Everyone pretty much knows this, where you just have like ranged attack 15%. Okay, there's nothing following it. It's just a I call it vanilla buffs. It's also, you can also call it unqualified buffs. So those are buffs that apply in every situation. Okay, so whether you're defending, attacking, reinforcing, going to sleep, whatever, the buffs work all the time. And you have qualified buffs, and the most popular of the qualified buffs are marching buffs. Okay, so I just looking at the chat in the corner of my eye, and someone is like, vanilla buffs are not the kinky ones.
They never are. They never are. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I like vanilla. I don't know about you guys. I like vanilla. Okay, it's one of my favorite
Yeah,
flavors. So
me too. Vanilla usually means plus
yeah,
points, right?
oh yeah, that's good. And there's a cinnamon in the house. Big ups to the cinnamon people. Okay, so yeah, all right. Um, so you have marching buffs, and marching buffs pretty much work in every situation outside your key, except reinforcing. Okay, so marching buffs, if you're attacking, if you're in a building, when you're trying to defend, anything like that, marching buffs, work in all situations outside your key, except for reinforcing. And you have attacking buffs, okay, and attacking buffs are simply, what it says, attacking. When you're on the attacking end of a report, attacking buffs would apply. Okay. Likewise, for defending, you're on the defending end, so defensive buffs will apply. Now there's I'm just gonna mention it because there's some level of weirdness that goes on with some of these buffs that we noticed in testing and things like that. You have some situations where some buffs are not supposed to work, but they're working and things like that. But basically, those are the situations, and at least from what I've seen so far, Evony kind of rectifies a lot of those situations. I don't know if anyone remembers the issue with the spirit beasts that we had, a little while ago, where you had the wolf Haiti and the serpent. They had defending debuffs, but they weren't working. Then Evany fixed it, and now they're working. So you have situations like that. And then you have reinforcing buffs. So reinforcing buffs are buffs that only work when you're reinforcing a keep. Okay? Not to be mistaken for when you're reinforcing a building, right? That's a distinction that we want to put down. You see that sometimes on some of the gears, see them particularly on blazons, things like that. So knowing what buffs you have and what to use at what particular time is very important. Also, what to focus on. Now, ideally speaking, you would want to focus on getting unconditional buffs, okay? Because they work in all situations. So naturally, you would want that. But the way the game is now, there aren't that many of them. You can only get them from specific areas, and they tend to be more expensive to get than the other buffs, which kind of makes sense because they work in all situations. And then the next one, you want attacking buffs. Okay, attacking buffs are good for your attack, and if you can get them, and they are a lot more than the unqualified buffs, so you can get a lot more of them. So you get more chances to boost your attack and things like that. And we have the defending buffs. Defending buffs are when you're defending, you tend to get a lot of those in um, the defense advance in the academy. You also get, some of them in the military academy. And those are the kind of buffs that you'll be looking for when you are, prioritizing working on your defense. And it's important to distinguish between the two because you don't want to be trying to work on your defense, but all you're doing is getting attacking buffs. Doesn't really help. And of course, when you get to higher levels, people start paying attention to reinforcing buffs. I I tell this to people because we most of the people that we see online, most of the people that do YouTube and things like that, relatively speaking, are fairly high level. Okay, and they talk about things like buffs, and they pay a lot of attention to reinforcing and all those kind of things. But it's not for everyone. I say it's not for everyone because not everyone is at the level where reinforcing is a big deal for you. You know. So if you are going with the mindset that this player told me, unqualified buffs are the best I should be going for because they're good for reinforcing, and you want to base all your assessment on reinforcing and things like that, that's not going to help you in the situation that you're in. Okay? If you're in an alliance where, okay, let me put it simply like this. A lot of us watch, big battlefields and all those kind of things. If your alliance does not play battlefield like what you're seeing on YouTube, reinforcing buffs are not a big deal for you. Okay, so focus on getting the vanilla buffs, the unqualified buffs, the attacking buffs, the defending buffs. Okay, once you get to a higher level, then you can start worrying about the other stuff. Okay, so I think that's the general thing that as a general base level for the buffs that we are talking about. So what the video that we did, I got together with now a good friend of mine, Contour. He's on C1, and we wanted to research the reinforcing buffs. Basically, what works, what doesn't work, and to do that, the only way the only way Evony provides in the game for you to test those things to a decent level is with Watchtower 41. Okay. So when you have Watchtower 41, you scout a keep, you can obviously see the troops that the keep has sent for reinforcing, but you can also see the buffs of the troop, also see the buffs of the reinforcing march. And it's kind of weird, the way Evony did this feature, because some people might not know it, but that part of the scout report is only valid for 10 minutes. So you scout the keep, you get the report, and within 10 minutes, you have access to the reinforcing buffs. So that was something that created the kind of like a technical issue when we're testing the things. But basically what it was, we sent a march to the keep, we scouted it to see what buffs it had, and then we checked different situations and tried to figure out what was going on there. So I'll just give you like the high level um, conclusions that we came to. So number one, vanilla buffs, unconditional buffs work for reinforcing. Okay. So generals that are, when leading the army are particularly good for reinforcing. Okay. And we went on to figure out that, okay, marching buffs don't work for reinforcing. So generals that have, that their skill is when leading the army to attack, most of the skills that they have are either attacking or marching. So unfortunately, you don't get the majority of buffs that the general provides. The next thing is that buffs from gear work. Buffs from refines work. Buffs from ascension and all those other things work when you're reinforcing. So the main difference between a general that is when leading the army and one that is when leading the army to attack, when you're reinforcing, you're looking at a difference of depending on the general, a difference of anywhere between 2 to 400% buffs. Okay. Now, from a lot of people, that might not be such a big deal, which is why I generally advise people like, look, if you've got a general that you've done up, keep going with it. But when you're playing at the higher levels, those kind of differences make, well, you know, not to sound funny, but those kind of differences make a difference. Okay, so that's something that that we kind of concluded from that. The other big thing that we concluded, which was kind of like a problem for some people, was that world generals, their in-city buffs apply when you're reinforcing a key. Okay, we tested this. We tested it several times. I have the scout reports to show it. I've done a separate video on that. So yeah, world generals, you could use them for reinforcing. Are they the best to use for reinforcing? Not really. And the reason being that they have a lot of buffs, but their buffs kind of tend to get spread out. Okay, because they're world generals, they will have buffs that apply to different troop types, so you don't get the kind of focus that you want. If you're sending a range march, you want the buffs to be focused on range. But if you're sending a general like Zachary Taylor, for example, he's a range-based world general, but he has ground buffs inside, he has mounted buffs inside, so everything it kind of gets spread out a bit. But they're still good to use for reinforcing. So I think those are like the big, main conclusions that that we got from that. There are a lot of other things, but those were the main stuff. So, is there? Just wanted to ask: is there anything anything else that wanted us to go over on buffs? I'm asking, before we move to debuffs.
Yes, thank you. I think that's an excellent rundown on where's the current status for what works in different cases. I wanted to touch a little bit on a small disagreement, I think, Aka, because so far I think we can conclude that your testing, Aka, was done based on scout reports, right? For those in keep buffs. And Wonky, I think you also have a plan to further maybe test these reinforcements buffs. Could you, Wonky, maybe lead on a bit about what you're thinking around to maybe make a certain conclusion around what works?
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's a disagreement. I think it's more of a deeper drill into it. So just want to add one point onto Aka's, that was something Aka touched on with war generals. So in the Senate, if you upgrade one of your PvP generals and replace it with a better one, you can put it in the Senate and get the benefit from it, but you can't do that with war generals. So one of the fringe benefits, I guess, of learning that war generals work for reinforcements is just repurpose one of those rather than training another PvP general. So at least you have a use for it rather than it sitting around gaining dust, or you dismiss it and lose loads of runestones and stuff. So that would be the thing I'd add there. On the Watchtower thing, so I recently built Watchtower 41 purely so that I could do a bit of science, and it's a bit of a weird one. I did a little test on it just before SVS, and when I sent troops to keep, I can scout it and get my buffs. If I apply a 50% buff to the march, it doesn't show on Watchtower at all. So that includes taking the troops out and putting them back in again. The buff still reads the same, like ignoring the 50% buff. Rescouting, all the different scenarios I could think of, it just showed the same values right the way through. So, once SBS is over, I'll do a bit more testing. And one of the suggestions somebody had was to move the keep in case they're caching the value of it at a certain location. So we can move it and then put them in again, see if the buffs show. So there's definitely something not right about it on that side. But my planned testing was basically to do some equivalence testing. So I would set up a scenario where I hitting, I don't know, 10,000 T1s or something, and I know, and I can vary the number of wounded based on the buffs that get sent. So I did a bit of testing of this for SBS, and I've got a scenario set up for it. So basically, I can add more ranged attack, for example, and I can get less wounded or in the attacking, or more wounded in the defending, and so on. And I can have less range attack and I get different wounded and so on. So I can see there, and I can do a rough equivalent. So I know if I add 30% range attack, I get this many more wounded. So then I can put a piece of gear on, for example. The classic is the Freedom Sword, which has got lots of marching buffs, so it's utterly useless for reinforcing. So I just wanted to test that by saying, right, I get 30% whatever it is from that sword. I do equivalence testing, so I send a general with 45% range attack, then I send another general with no range attack, but with the sword, and see if I see the same results. So this was, and then what I wanted to do is test that and then back that up with what I get out of Watchtower. Because there's quite a lot of skepticism around, is Watchtower accurate? And I wanted to basically be able to work out, if it is accurate, what's it accurate for, so we can actually use it and get good results. And if it's not accurate, how many customer service tickets do I need to raise? So at the moment, I'm on my first customer service ticket, which is it doesn't work. So that's basically where I am with it.
If you
and it's a really weird game because they don't explain any of this. They just the onus is on you to go work it out, which is insane.
Right.
So.
I mean, with that, I just made a recent video talking about some buffs that Evony is showing incorrectly in your keep. And it's basically saying you have a ton of flat buffs if you have duty general gear. So it's only going to apply to big coiners. But those buffs actually don't apply. It's a visual glitch. And that's one of the things that you're talking about is Evony will give you numbers, but now you have to discern from your hospital if those numbers actually work. They're giving you these marching, attacking, and regular buffs. And when I watched Red Evony's video, I was like, wow, I never thought about using a wall general as a reinforcement general. Even though I knew that in-city buffs worked, but I never thought of it as a wall general as a reinforcing general. I thought that was pretty genius, really. So,
well, the wording trips you up there, because the wording says when the general is the main city defense general.
Right.
Which makes you instantly think, well, that's not going to be valid for reinforcing, is it? But
yeah.
So I thought that was a very good thing. The other things that I kind of wanted to mention on this is that I've been sending out this little graph for everybody to look at. It's from the Evony Wiki website. It's a really good graph for somebody just to look at it and say, okay, my attacking buffs apply here and reinforcing buffs apply here. Like, I think what a lot of people think is when it says reinforcing, they think just reinforcing. They think reinforcing a city or a building or something like that, where that might not apply to a battlefield building. And I think that's one of the things that people do have some trouble with is when those apply. And also attacking or marching buffs, they still apply even when you're inside those battlefield buildings. It's a little bit counterintuitive. And I think that's where most people get tripped up on.
Mm.
Okay. Am I kind of quiet? I could raise my voice.
Yeah, go on.
Is that better? Somebody said I was quiet, so I had to raise it. But when you guys are done, I will bring up, I know people hate math, but I will bring up something that I think is important so people can understand the big difference between defense and HP when you're looking at your buffs.
Yes, Didi, this is excellent, because I think this is what we discussed earlier, that the importance of HP versus other buffs. But guys, before we move on, we have a few questions from the audience, and I also think we should clear up some of the obvious, let's call it mistakes, that at least new players make when it comes to buffs and debuffs, and what applies in what situations. Because I think one of the things I see the most is that there's been somebody thinks that the last person when we are talking about buildings in Battlefield or SVS, many people believe that the last person who enters a building, that buffs will be applied. I think am I right to say that we most agree that it's the highest buffs in the building that will apply, not the last one entering? Guys, could you please clarify this?
I don't agree. So I think a lot of this comes from when you do a scout report or battle report, what it's showing in that is not going to apply to every single person in there, because if it was whoever reinforced it, whoever started the rally, whoever has the strongest buffs, then you would have alliances where you have one island and 20 alts, and they would just be able to mow down everybody, because the alts with low buffs, if you applied the large buffs to them, they'd be just so overpowered. So from my testing, and I can't say that this applies to every single scenario, because I might be testing it in my server, but I don't test it in Battlefield, for instance. But from what I've seen, everybody uses their own buffs, and generally it'd be the alliance, whoever's starting the rally, it's going to be their debuffs that apply. Again, this is from my testing. It's going to be the rally starter debuffs that apply. And when it comes to a building, it'd be the building owner. So if you go into a building, people reinforce it, and then you leave, it's going to be your buffs, even though you're no longer in there. So we typically do this for, like, let's say if we want to do a relic during SVS, we'll put whoever has the best debuffs inside the relic first. It is their relic. They have those debuffs. And then everybody else will reinforce it, and it'll apply their debuffs. When it's in city, it's whoever city you're reinforcing. It's not, I mean, if you have stronger debuffs, and this is something I might want to test a little bit more before I commit 100% to it, but generally it's going to be the person that owns that city, that owns that building. It's going to be their debuffs that apply. There is something that I wanted to test.
I've tested that. Let me add that. I've tested that, and that's not right. The highest debuffs apply.
Was it a scout report?
We tested it.
I've tested it with troops. I've tested it with troops. So if I hit a city, and I know there's a certain difference of, I know exactly what I'm going to kill, and I put in one reinforcement with one T1 from a low level keep, it makes almost no difference. If I put one in for my main, which has much better debuffs, totally changes the equation, and that's with one T1. And the and the debuffs show on the report, and the debuffs really change the result.
That's
this
great.
was tested about 9 months ago, so it might have changed. But one other thing to add, there was a release note from Evony recently where they said they changed the mechanics so that the highest person owns the building or something. I can't remember the exact details, but they were quite recently, like the last few weeks, they sent around one of those lovely emails where they list some of the mechanics changes they made. And I think the buildings one was in there.
I will have to take a look at that again, because a lot of this, I might do an alliance building, and it might not. I might forget if I had tested it directly on a in city, and these things change. Yeah. Like when I was doing the monster simulator, it was always the highest debuff, and I was like, that's weird, because that's not how it works when I do a rally with PvP.
Yeah. Just to add to what Derrick said, like everything, I'm pretty much in line with everything that that Derrick said. I think when it comes to rallies, I think it's the rally setter. Everybody brings their own buffs. Rally setters debuffs are used. When it comes to buildings, same thing. The owner of the building, first person in, their debuffs will apply. Everybody brings their own buffs. Another thing, when it comes to buildings, the capacity of the building is set by the owner. So depending on how big your embassy is or whatever, that will dictate how many people can actually reinforce that building. So you generally want somebody that has a big embassy going in. At least that's the stuff that I've seen. From the debuff side, for the wall for the reinforcing. We tested it. Like I said, maybe things would be different now because it's been several months since we did that video. But debuffs didn't work. Debuffs didn't work when reinforcing. The only debuffs that applied were the keep being reinforced. There's even on the scout reports, there's nowhere that it shows anything about debuffs. And we tried several times, we changed generals, changed gear, debuffs didn't work. So that I just wanted to put that in. Then Wonky, just wanted to get back to the previous question or point that you raised about not being able to get anything from the reports. Man, I'll tell you, that is like, I didn't say anything about it, because there's really no way you can convey that unless somebody is actually testing it. But that is one of the big problems that we faced with that video. True talk.
Yeah.
Okay? True talk. I'm gonna tell you guys now. You guys have not heard this anywhere else before. That reinforcing video, I had already done the video. I did the video was finished, okay? And then we were like, okay, let's go back to go and check some stuff. And just through coincidence, we kind of found out something and it threw everything completely off. So I had to scrap that initial video and started working on this one again. So basically what it is, when you do the scout report, and if you look at the top of the scout report, you'll see there's some fine text in there that tells you that the buffs, the reinforcing buffs refresh every 10 minutes, I think it is. So anytime you make a change in the buffs, like you add the 50%, you have to wait like close to 8 to 10 minutes before it actually shows up on the report.
Yeah, I tried that. I waited for it to expire and did a new one, and it was still showing the original amount. Yeah, I'll give it a go. I mean, it was a quick set of tests before SVS, so
yeah. And then the other thing is that when you make a change, then wait for like 5-6 minutes. In some cases, the report actually updates by itself. So you might not need to, you might not need to do another scout report.
That was my initial. Yeah, when I read the fine print on it, it doesn't give a time period. It just says they will update, and that's what I assumed. So I took a screenshot of the first report, then applied the changes and waited, and yeah, it never changed. No matter what I did, it would never update. But again, this is a Watchtower 41 idiom probably rather than a buff idiom.
Yeah, I think it's just the way it's just the quirkiness of the way the game is. But yeah, those
high quality product.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just when you make a change, just wait a bit and maybe check it again, scout again. It usually changes after about 5 to 8 minutes, something like that.
I'll give it a go. Yeah.
But guys, just to sum up, because I think we have to also try to keep the audience kind of in line with what we're discussing, because I know it's for some it's very advanced, and for others it's obvious. But I think if we're honest, I think everybody agrees on that. Whenever you are reinforcing a keep or you are reinforcing a building, you will fight with your own buffs. I mean, what your general and your march brings, you will fight with those buffs in your turn in that battle. I think what is contested is what applies in a building or a keep when it comes to debuffs. Is it the highest debuff in the reinforced keep or building, or is it the first one in, or the rally setter? We are jumping a bit, but let's try to be clear about maybe what the community is not clear about here, right?
I'll be honest, I'm not going to be able to answer that because after hearing, what Wonky has said, maybe I need to test it again because it does kind of change. Like maybe I did it on a reinforcing building like an Alliance City and it didn't matter with an actual keep. So I like to test it with actual troops and see how that works before I can make a good answer on that.
But DD, your testing, what made you conclude it was, you said it was the first person into the building
The first
that
person,
applied debuffs?
right? And I got that from testing it with like an Alliance City. So I don't do as much testing if I can help it on actual cities because you'll have a lot of some more difficulties with let's say the Archer Tower, right? The Archer Tower is going to interfere with the test, so you have to deal with that variable. If they have traps, you have to deal with those variables. So it's a lot more. Oh, it's a lot more difficult to apply those. Get an accurate calculation when you have these variables. So it's easier to do in an Alliance City because you don't have those. So I wanted to retest that before I could come to a good conclusion.
Yeah. So what we are saying is that we are not sure about the debuff part.
Really. For me,
can I just jump in here very quickly? I think for the debuffs, like I'm like I said, I agree with Derrick that it's okay. Let's talk about keep, for example. I think it's the buffs from the keep that the keep being reinforced. We tested it, like I said, okay, maybe not as extensive as what Derrick normally does. But again, let me ask you guys, when we're talking about debuffs, what debuffs are we actually talking about? If we're talking, for example, if we're talking about debuffs from military academy, for example, all of those are attacking debuffs. So they wouldn't even apply when reinforcing.
I think you also bring up a good point.
No.
Well,
no. Debuffs are generally unqualified. They're not debuffed when attacking. But there are some of those in military academy, but on gear and generals, the debuffs are universal.
Yes, they are. But the point I'm making is that if you only count those debuffs, they're not that much.
It depends. It depends on what you're reinforcing. So if you're reinforcing a low level with a high level keep, they will make a difference. And you'll see it on reports. Like I can see my siege debuffs when I'm sending siege reins to people. And I know that, and they, you can see on the report, there's my debuffs in there because their debuffs normally are much lower. I think other people have seen it as well. I saw a comment in chat, somebody else saying that as well. I found the tests I've done. I did them in January this year, and I'll send a link to Derrick. So
yeah, no. I think we should move on.
Derrick, before you move on, I'm sorry I interrupt you, but can we say something very simplified about misunderstandings about buffs and debuffs? Because I think if you're a player that just send reinforcement to a building or to a keep, let's say whatever keep it is or whatever building it is, the report will only show the buffs of the last person entering that building. It doesn't show the buffs or debuffs actually applied to you. Is this correct?
The buffs that you're seeing sometimes are not even of a particular person. I've noticed doing like these scouts and these reports that you might see the buffs of somebody else's archer and then the buffs of somebody else's mounted. Evony's kind of weird when it comes to these numbers, and I rarely do trust them. So it's hard for me to tell you where all these buffs and debuffs are coming from. Something that I was actually wanting to test earlier, which it's not going to be really relevant for here, is remember how debuffs can only apply to half of whatever your buff is. You have 1,000% buff, you can only debuff 500, right? Well, I would like to test to make sure that when it's debuffing every particular person. Remember, we said they use their own buffs. Well, does that mean that it's going to debuff 500 on everybody? Or if people have different buffs, is it going to debuff depending on their buffs? Is there going to be a cap? That's something else I haven't tested, because when you introduce more variables, introduce these rally sizes, it becomes a little bit more difficult to accept that. One thing I want to talk about is when it comes to putting debuffs inside of a city. Remember, most cities have subsidy troops, and you could be a K43 reinforcing a K33. Hit their debuffs are probably going to be higher than yours, just based on all their subsidies that they have, all the subsidy gears that they have. So it might not even really be a very valid thing to worry about. I've had players ask me, well, if I reinforce myself with a bunch of Neros, is that going to help me? No. If anything, it's either going to be the highest debuff, or it's not going to apply at all. Those are things that you should take account for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just add something from like a practical standpoint? I mean, this is the way I think about stuff is, okay, how would it actually work practically? So imagine a scenario where we're talking about buildings now, and buffs and debuffs and stuff like that, and like everyone is fighting to be the last player that goes in, because the assumption is that the last player in is the one that determines the buffs. So imagine you're in battlefield and you're like, okay, our K44 is gonna be the last person in. Everybody send troops. Then he's waiting for everyone to come in, and then he sends his troops, and then you have like a K35 that is like, okay, guys, I'm coming, and then he comes in last. What happens? So I mean, that's just like my thinking about it. Why I don't. That's another reason why I don't think it's the last person in. I know everyone has like anecdotal stuff that that points to these things. So that's why we actually need proper testing. But yeah, I just wanted to add that because it's like a funny thing that I thought about. So
yeah. So I don't think you can properly test this, because the information you get back from a test isn't enough to work it out. Because there's so many variables, and you've got just what's in that report, and that's all condensed down through whatever Evony do to it. So you're never going to be able to take that and reverse engineer the exact sequence of all of the hits and so on everything. Again, like you say, does it matter? I don't know. I mean, you can probably do the broad brush testing. I mean, I've seen some comments in there saying somebody's done some testing here where the last person in makes it easier to kill. We could probably distill that down to a simple scenario we could test, but we'll never know the full answer. We can only do broad brushstroke answers, I think.
Yes, and I think this is an important discussion, because the debuffs is very hard to, as Wonky says, it's very hard to decipher from the report. But I think if you are to simplify something, it is that if you are a lower keep player, like if you're a K37, K38, K39, reinforcing a building or another keep, if you're getting hit by another player that has a lot of higher buffs than you, I mean, a player that has 2 or 3 times higher buffs than you, your troops will get annihilated inside that building or inside that keep. I at least that is what I'm seeing from my experience on this. What's your thoughts, Wonky and DD and Aka? I mean, let's talk real game experience.
yeah, I agree with you. I think someone posted it in the chat. When you're reinforcing, if anyone has experience of this, when you're reinforcing like a keep that really doesn't have debuffs and stuff like that, like your troops are your troops are lunch meat. Okay, like they will tear through your troops, quicker than you can say, PB and J, right? So I think that's why I think you know, when you're reinforcing a keep, that's why I think that it matters. And this is something I'm not speaking. We've all had the experience of this. I can pretty much bet that a lot of us here have experienced that. Like you have a low, like maybe your friend's farm, you know, drops bubble, and you send troops. Like, oh, let's reinforce it, and then the big guy comes and just plows through everything with a ground march. You know, so yeah, for the buildings. I think it's pretty much like we said already. Yeah, I'll hand over to Wonky and Derrick.
From a practical,
I mean,
Derek, you go for it.
I think buffs are. I mean, buffs are going to give you a great advantage. I'm actually going to talk about this a little bit later in the call, because I specifically want to talk about buffs when you're doing a rally and how they could greatly affect things that you probably wouldn't think about. So I'd rather move on with the call than to talk about this too much.
Yes,
Agreed.
absolutely. Derek, I agree, because let's keep the rally stuff and the march order and the attacking order and all of that to its own topic. There's a few questions maybe we should address that has been coming up related to this buffs and debuff discussions, and I'm just going to go through them, and let's see if we can clarify any of them. One question here is, when your wall general is leading the army, reins aren't buffed though, right? Ares gear. Not sure what the question really is, but I think the answer here is when leading the army, your buff will apply when you're also reinforcing a keep, right, guys? Is that agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. So leading the army is usually what we call non-qualified buff. So it will apply in most situations, whether or not you are in a keep or you are in a building. Okay. So
Sorry, could you say that again, please?
Yeah, leading the army. That is an unqualified buff. It will work whenever you are inside a building, defending, or whenever you are attacking.
Correct.
Yeah.
Actually,
right. All situations.
Something important about that is, you know, Evony's been doing power creep on generals. Every new general is the new most powerful general there is. You know, it's happened all the time, to the point
it's always like that.
to the point that the new premium generals right now are better wall generals than most of the wall generals. Like the new premium generals that have, you know, that are not attacking only, they are better wall generals than your current wall generals. So that's something to think about right now.
I think you're right, Didi, because many of the new generals have leading the army as buffs, right?
Yes,
and they will also work if you put them on the wall.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just move on to the question, guys. Just interrupt me if you have anything more to add. Reinforce and in building, is it different? What counts?
Okay. So I think what this question is, and it's something that I don't know, is when you. I think this is what it is. When you rally a building, let's say you're rallying a hospital in Battlefield, and everybody joins, and now you're inside that building. What is applying at that point? And if you go and reinforce that building later, is that going to be different? Because remember, your rally buffs are different than your marching buffs. So I think the question is, if we rally a building, do we have rally buffs inside there? Do we have normal marching buffs inside there? What buffs are applying? And that's a great question that I have not ever tested and looked at. So I don't know if anybody else has, but I think that's a really good question.
I have
I've seen some crazy results. So just on that question, there's a couple of theories about it, about which buffs apply on those that I haven't tested yet. That's one of the reasons I built Watchtower 41. But yeah, some of the buff results you see are absolutely crazy. You know, I'm seeing for example, with ground, and I can't remember exactly what the building was. I was seeing buffs that were higher than my rally buffs in that building, and I'm just like, well, where did they come from? So there's a couple of theories around the marching buffs plus your defending buffs added on top of it and all that stuff. It's like, well, I need to do some testing to try and work out backwards what buffs of mine are applying. But yeah, you can get some absolutely weird results like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, and I also think that if you, as DD mentioned, that if you're rallying a building in battlefield, like say a hospital or whatever, obviously in the time where you are rallying, all in rally buffs and all of that will count when you hit the building. But if you win the rally and all your troops are inside the building, I think it's logical to think that in rally buffs will not count when you're inside the building, because then you are defending the building.
Yeah, we're guessing about that. That's not.
Yeah,
let's
we're
not
guessing
say
about
it's
it.
not logical.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster. So the thing that confused me was I soloed this building. I didn't rally it, yet the buffs were higher than my rally buffs when I got hit in it. Yeah. So yeah, confusing as anything.
Yeah, I
anyway, okay. So
let's
rain check on that one,
because that's how it all goes wrong. Yeah,
absolutely. And let's just move on to the questions, because I think many of them is in the same area. And we have a question here: is do buffs from the big keeps work while reinforcing when the main skill of the big keep is reinforcement? I'm not completely sure what that question means, but I think it's, again,
this is a keep with reinforcing buffs.
I think it's
if you have a keep with reinforcement buffs, like an actual keep skin, is that the question? If you send reins, do the reinforcement buffs from the keep skin apply? Is that the question?
Yeah. I think that's the question, Wonky.
Good question. Don't know, but we can test that at some point with Watchtower. Yeah, assuming that Watchtower actually works.
But if you have reinforcement buffs, those will most likely logically apply when you are reinforcing.
The way I'm understanding this is it's talking about like Dimitri that has a reinforcement. That's his only active skill is reinforcement. It will work for in city. It does not work for buildings.
Yeah.
If that's the question, that's how it works. Reinforcement only. Just think, instead of saying reinforcement, think of in city that doesn't work on your wall. It's the worst. It's the worst buff that you can get, because it's only applies for when you reinforce somebody else's keep.
Yep.
So.
Okay, guys. I'm skipping ahead of questions related to rallies, because I think we'll get onto that next. Do relics count as buildings? Is a question here. I would say yes, but any of you guys have any?
No idea. No idea.
They are a type of building. I don't know, because they're a little bit different, right? You can't rally them. That's what's so powerful about relics. You can put a ton of troops in there from your server, and the enemies can't rally it. They have to hit it with solos. So that's I don't know how they are different. That's something I'd have to test before I could feel really confident about it.
So we are saying that this is not tested extensively, actually. Right. But I mean, it's logical to think.
I think it's just whatever your typical buffs are. It's not going to be your. It's whatever your marching debuffs are. That's what I believe it is, without doing the actual testing, and that's what makes sense to me. Again, I haven't tested it. A lot of people are not asking for relic mechanics. That's not priority on the list, but that's what I would assume for right now.
Yeah, and also I just to take a few questions as a summary. I see from the questions here that there's a lot of doubt as to, I think we already touched it, but if you are rallying a building, what buffs apply when you are rallying and what buffs will apply when you own the building. So I think we already discussed that topic, and I think we agree that we actually don't know exactly, you know, the truth of of that.
I think that's going to be something that I'll test. I'll make a short video, and everybody will see it in 2 months from now.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have more questions. When buffs on sub-city general gear, does it apply to your entire city?
No.
Just the in-city
Buffs-
stats or
buffs
the
or
other
debuffs?
buffs?
Buffs or debuffs?
What buffs on sub-city gen applies on your entire city? Just the in-city stats and the other
Just
buffs?
debuffs.
Just yeah.
Just debuff.
Yeah. I think this is pretty easy question that most of us agree on, that the only thing you care about on your sub generals is debuffs.
Yeah.
Because the debuffs will apply to your main city. The buffs will only apply to the troops in your sub city joining the fight, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. So that's actually that's something we actually can agree on, guys. And also there's a few questions here about speed. We jump through those.
Let's ignore those.
No questions about.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
question
yeah.
about.
There's better use of time than talking about speed books.
Let's
That's like a no-go area. No questions about speed.
it's what are you doing on your first date question. There's something you shouldn't do. Yeah. Also, there's a last question here on this part, guys. Did I understand that correctly? In-city buffs are for reinforcing other keeps. If they do not add to your wall, do they add to your own troops in your own city?
That I don't know exactly what he's asking.
What?
In city buffs are good for reinforcement. Your troops do not like mix in with the troops that are already in there. Your troops fight separately. Everybody gets their own turn. Every layer that you send to reinforce somebody, they get their own turn. So I don't know if that's what he was trying to say, but yeah.
Yeah, so in city buffs, I think we also touched it. I think earlier, Aka, from your testing, that in city buffs will also apply on your main wall general in your own city, but it will also probably apply when you are in reinforcing another keep. I think that's the
Okay.
takeaway.
All right. Okay. Just to clarify, if you have a wall general on your keep, the in-city buffs for that wall general will apply to your keep. If you are sending a wall general, for example, to reinforce, the in-city buffs will apply to the reinforcing march that you have sent. It will not apply to the buffs of the keep that you are reinforcing.
Yeah.
So just wanted to clarify that, just in case anyone's having some confusion with that.
I think a good.
Here's an interesting clarification there. So Watchtower 41 shows different buffs for different people doing reinforcements. So that kind of shoots the argument that everybody fights for the same buffs in the head as well.
Yep.
Okay, guys. So I think this is. I think we have talked about buffs, debuffs, and what applies in different circumstances. Maybe we should move on, Didi, as you have hinted at a few times. Let's move on to rally mechanics. Does it matter if you join the rally first, last, who fights in what rounds, and what is important to remember in rallies specifically? Derrick, take it away.
So, before we get into rally mechanics, something I did want to talk about, because we just talked about buffs. I wanted to talk about the formula. If I talk about this a lot because I think it's very important to know how the defense and HP play a role in this. And a lot of players ask, what is better? Do I buff defense or do I buff HP? And generally, I'll say your best answer is saying buff HP. Defense is a little bit better for when you're attacking than when you're defending, but overall, I'd still say HP is the better one. And I just want to share real fast, the formula for anybody to, if they haven't been introduced to it, it's just something that I think everybody should kind of have an understanding, because it's how I figure out what's going on. I just shared it in the chat. It is basically whatever amount of troops you have times your overall attack, and your overall attack is going to be the base troop attack. Yeah, headache warning. Base troop attack times the buffs minus the debuffs plus your flats, and then you times that by a troop modifier. Let's say you have archers attacking mounted. You do 20% more damage to mounted. Evony released that information recently, so everybody can kind of see it. But there's modifiers for everything, for everyone. The archer tower has modifiers. The traps have modifiers. Everyone has modifiers. The monsters have modifiers. Everything follows this formula. And then the last part is attack divided by your attack plus the enemy's defense. And this is where the defense has a big role in this. Defense is like a debuff to the enemy attack. That is it. That all it is the more defense you have, the less attack that the enemy troops will have. That means the less damage they're going to do to your troops. So I'm going to see if I can share screen, and let's see if this works. We're going to pick, let's see here, a paint. There we go. Go live. Can everyone see this? That's able to look at shared screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
All right.
Yeah, that works.
So this is just paint. This is the formula, but I don't want to talk about all. Let's go right here. Let's see if my pen works. Okay, I don't want to talk about this stuff right here. This is modifiers and whatever number of troops. What I really want to talk about is this right here: the attack divided by attack plus defense. So all you're really doing is you're taking your attack and you're going to be multiplying that times that attack plus attack divided by attack plus defense. If the enemy has zero defense, this is just 1/1, and that means your attack is going to be whatever. It's going to be just whatever your attack is. So if we cross that out because my eraser is not working. If we have attack times attack and this is attack plus defense. If the defense is double your attack, we'll just put a 2 right there. Yeah, this is terrible. But a 2 basically is just going to be attack times what? I messed that up. Sorry. If the
can I just comment on your excellent paint skills?
Oh yeah, I know, right?
They should be. I mean, it's world class here.
It would be a third.
My whiteboard.
So just to go through, it would be a third of it. So your attack would be cut to a third rather than the full attack.
Right. Yeah. I messed it up by saying 2 times defense. I meant 2 times your attack. So just to give like a quick example, if your attack was 500, so that'd be times your attack again 500 plus, and let's say the enemy's defense was 1500. Sorry, put zeros there. So that'd be 500 over 2000 multiplied by 500. So that'd be 1/4. So it's whatever 500 is divided by 4, which is going to be 125. So your overall attack will be 125 if the enemy has a 1500 defense. I'm sorry.
That's your effective attack.
Effective attack.
Yeah.
So what this is really showing is if you have one tier 14 troop and their attack is 10,000. That's their attack. If you compare that to 200 tier 1 troops, their attack is, say, would it be 500? I'm trying to do the math in my head. 1,000, 10,000. Yeah. Actually, let's say that's 100,000. Sorry. Overall, they're going to put out the same amount of damage at 100,000 overall damage if you don't apply the defense, if there's no defense. If you do apply a defense, it's going to greatly affect the lower tier troops that have less of attack. So if we do the same math, we say 500 times, over here it's going to be 500 again. And let's say that the defense is, 10,000. That's going to be a huge. I'd actually have to do the math on a calculator, but that's going to be a huge discrepancy, right? You're going to practically do no damage at that point. So this 500 divided by 10,000. So that's plus. Yeah. So really, it's going to do 0.5 of what your 0.05 of what your attack is, pretty much. So it's going to do 25 attack overall, approximately. So that defense is really strong against low attacking troops. So what that means is if you're attacking somebody that has 300 million tier 1s that don't have flat attack on them, it's going to cause them to that your defense is going to have a huge impact on that. That's why some players that have a lot of tier 1s get destroyed by ground marches, because they didn't put flat attack on their tier 1s, and their tier 1s basically do nothing to these high defense troops. It's also the same reason why when we're looking at monsters, when monsters attack you, mounted defense does nothing. Against monsters have such a high attack that your defense change does practically nothing. It might change your wounds by 1 over a course of several 1,000% buffs. And that's because of this right here. So defense, just overall thing, defense is going to be better against weaker, low-level troops, and if the enemy has lots of them, because you're basically debuffing the enemy. The enemy has a ton of troops, you're debuffing the enemy. Where HP is going to be buffing your troops, making your troops much stronger, and it's going to have an overall better effect.
DD, can you say something simple about for the less skilled players? What is actually HP, defense, and attack doing to your troops? I mean, in a general sense.
Wait, was that not simple?
No, yeah, I think you lost at least half. I think.
Oh yeah,
for your equations.
Man, our audience just dropped like a rock. No, basically all that's happening is that after you figure out this formula, this damage formula that I shared, I'll share it again in case people don't want to scroll up. Once you figure out this damage formula, you divide that by the troops' HP that your layer is attacking, and you'll get the number of wounds that you're going to get. Like if the enemy has 10,000 HP, you divide this by 10,000, and you'll get however many wounds that you're going to have of that layer. And that's how all of this works. There is a troop modifier. The troop modifiers are in the files of the game. They do share them in the barracks a little bit, but each troop has a certain modifier when it attacks another one. That's why we say ground's good against archers. When if you send a ground rally at somebody that has a lot of archers, you're probably not going to do so well, because you still have to get through their ground, and they're mounted, and their archers might just destroy you. So it just makes it so that your ground does more damage to the archers, and also the troop modifier makes it so the archers do less damage to the ground. So ground.
So
Go ahead.
I mean, I think many players struggles to understand the difference between HP and defense when it comes to. I mean, what are they going to prioritize? Because I think many players struggles to understand the difference between HP and defense.
I would say prioritize HP, and this is what I think most people got, was prioritize HP, because it's going to help your troops, especially on your defense. HP is going to be greater, because if you think about it, I said defense is like an overall debuff on attack, right? Well, when you're attacking a keep, a lot of times the keep's going to have, a lot of troops. I would say work on your HP. Same thing with like your mounted general. Whenever you're fighting a monster, HP is going to work better than defense. Not to say defense is not important, but defense is going to just reduce the amount of attack the enemy has. That's it. It's just like armor. It's reducing the damage that the enemy's doing to you. They both work well together, but HP is generally going to be your priority.
And DD, while we're on the topic of both HP and defense, because I think, as you say, you should prioritize differently based on whether you have ground, whether you have cav, whether you have siege, or whether you have ranged. I think a hot topic we should move on to is when it comes to siege defense and siege attack, because Derrick, I think what you're interested in also specifically is the importance of HP debuff when it comes to siege, and I think that's where you and Wonky has some valuable input.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just going to answer. Morty had a question. Does defense apply after the enemy troop attack gets debuffed? Yes. Defense. So that formula that I shared, that is your attack after all your debuffs are applied, and after your flat number refines are applied. This is the only thing. Defense is the only thing that can debuff flat attack. Okay, or that's it. So this is your overall attack after everything's been applied, after all the debuffs are applied. Those are those numbers in there. Same thing with defense. Whatever defense you have, your troop has at the end of the day, that's what's going in that formula. So that's going to debuff everything. So I hope that answers this question. I think we can move on to those sweet rally mechanic explanations we want to talk about.
So have you figured out rally joining order yet? Because I'm all ears.
Honestly, it is difficult, because what I've been testing is, people like to think when you send an attack that your troops attack top tier down, tier 14, tier 13, tier 12, all the way down to tier 1s. That's how a lot of people think. That's not how it happens. And this will change depending on the number of layers you have in this battle. You add an additional layer, it's going to make a different troop attack first. It is, a lot of times I see it as like the tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s, tier 4s, they're going to be attacking a lot earlier than your higher tier troops. And then there's going to be some randomness for other troops. It is something that is, it seems random. Like I can't find a way that somebody could, in the middle of starting rally, being like, okay, well, we're going to send this many layers and all the people are going to join and this is going to be the person that hits first. There is no way that I can figure out people to find a way to predict that. It is something that is consistent. So if you do have the same amount of layers and the enemy has the same amount of layers, then it is consistent. It's just a little bit random which troop attacks. And the same thing happens with the rally participants. The rally participants are going to attack in a random order as well, according to how they join. So if you have the same exact rally, the same amount of troops, but people join in a different order, that's going to cause that's going to cause you to have a difference in wounds. And somebody actually sent me a battle report asking me questions. They're like, "Hey, me and my one friend, we did this test where I started the rally, and I got more wounds, and then they started the rally, and then they got more wounds, but they, my buffs are higher, and how did that work?" And it was because your troops attacked a different layer, and maybe your troops were able to clear out a layer where the other player couldn't clear out that layer. So it is the rally order. It is something that's, as of right now, it's not something that I think anybody can predict what happens. But what you can do, what is very, what you can actually predict is what troops are going to get attacked. When I did my testing with archers, I realized that archers will attack the mounted troop that has the highest attack. So if you have a bunch of people reinforcing you, if they have higher mounted buffs than you do, their highest tier troops are going to be attacked by archers before yours. The same thing happens with siege. If you do a siege attack on somebody, the first, let's say you're doing a rally, you're rallying somebody, your siege are going to attack their keep. The first siege that the enemy is going to attack is the siege that has the highest attack, which is going to generally be the highest tier, because generally tier 15s, tier 16s, those are going to have the highest overall attack. But that's not always going to be the case, because as you move down, somebody might have way higher attack than you. So that means that their tier 12s are going to be attacked before your tier 13s, because their buffs are so much higher. The same thing happens with flats. I actually did some rallies this SVS, and we were calculating our overall attack on our siege, and we noticed that this one guy, his buffs were lower than another rally participant, but he had more flat buffs than the other rally participant. So what happened is his the other rally participant, their higher tier siege got attacked first because they had higher attack. When we moved down the list to the tier 11s benefited from that flat attack more, and then they got attacked before the other rally participants' flat attack. And if you give me a second, I could try to pull up that battle report and share it while one of you guys talk. But I think that's a very important thing to understand when you're reading your battle reports. Who's getting attacked first? It's going to be the siege that has the highest overall attack.
And Derrick, while we're on the subject, I notice a lot of players in the audience asks also some of these basic questions because they are also curious about, and I know you have tested this extensively. What's the importance of the range bonus skill book? I mean, both on the wall and obviously when you're also attacking in a PvP match.
Well, if the players have watched one of my videos, I talk about this. I kind of talk about it twice. For my testing, and I don't get too much of it because it might go along with the speedbook stuff, so I don't want to talk about that. But the range skill books and the siege skill books, those do add range to your siege and to your archers. It's not as much as Evony says. Evony says level 4 gives your siege 200. Well, it didn't matter because nobody here knew what 200 meant. They didn't know what 200 range is. It's just an arbitrary number because nobody had an idea of what the battlefield was for that to even work. It's not 200, it adds 20. It still can have a significant effect on the battle. Archers, same thing. Archers, the skill book says 100 range, it's actually 80. It doesn't really have a huge effect. You don't have to think about it too much. It's still adding range. It's not as much as it's saying. I don't know why it's incorrect. I don't understand why, but it is. Does it have an effect? Yes. So I think the best way to really think about this is doing a barb attack. I know people think, okay, barb attacks, they're not PvP. Barbarian castles follow the physics of a PvP battle. The reason why they seem really different is they don't have range buffs, they don't have siege buffs. Their layers are completely weird, and they're not going to give you as many wounds overall because there's a modifier on the wounds, but they work very similar. When you're using a archer march against these barbs, well, after you kill out all the mounted troops, their archers are going to be attacking your mounted troops. Now your archers have a range buff, and where the base range of archers is 500, your range is now 580. So you're able to attack their archers from a distance, from 580 range, and their archers are not able to counterattack you back, which I think is going to be we're going to get into later, is counterattack damage. Counterattack damage, I think, is one of the most fundamental mechanics of Evony that we discovered recently that I think really changes how people read their battle reports now. But basically what's happening is if you attack a barbarian and you just put a bunch of mounted layers in there, you have people reinforcing your archer march with mounted layers, your archers will not take any damage from their archers because their archers are going to be so busy fighting your mounted layers, and you're just going to stand off to the side, peppering them with your archers until all the archers are dead. That doesn't say that you're not going to lose wounds from their siege. Their siege can still, hit you, and eventually you're going to have to fight the siege, and they're going to outrange you, so you will get counterattack damage if you don't kill them in one shot, that layer one shot. But
Didi, let me stop you there. Are you saying that for a barb castle you can rally yourself with a high tier archer march T13s, and then others can join with T1 cavs?
Yeah.
Basically,
the tier. So it depends on when you say tier 13 archers. I made a short video about this, and I can go through it a little bit more, but. The reason I don't say use tier 14 archers is the first layer of your archers are going to get shot by their siege. And some barbarians are full of tier 13s. Some of them are full of tier 12s. They have different ranges. Their tier 12s will attack your archers twice before they start working on your siege. So you might want to go 2 layers down and send tier 12s in that case, but you'd want to have more mounted layers so that your tier 12s have enough turns to kill off all the archers and all the ground and stuff like that. So but that what I was trying to explain, this whole reason why I'm saying this is because barbarians don't have the buff, they don't have the archer range buff where most people do. This is something that you can actually visibly see by just adding some mounted layers and letting their archers get busy with more mounted layers, and your archers will do more damage to their archers. So without counterattack, a lot of times when you have damage in barbarians, it's from counterattack damage from your archers failing to defeat a layer of archers in one shot, or in multiple shots, but they're within range. So that's why, regardless of me telling everybody, hey, siege bonuses and range bonuses for archers, they're wrong. I think a lot of people are taking that as those books don't work. They do work. They add range. It's just not as much as the game states. That's all.
Okay, so I think it's a lot of numbers, Didi. I know some of the audience will probably say I know math. I do too. Wonky, are you still with us?
Wonky?
Yep, sorry, I was muted.
Yes. Because I think we were discussing it, but Wonky, could you talk a little about because you're known for your siege expertise, both in offense and defense. follow up on what Derrick says. Could you please explain a little bit how you are looking at siege defense? How can you do a siege defense? Can you do it as a free-to-play player? Do you have to coin a certain amount? And what's important for you when it comes to siege? I think we should discuss it.
Well, let's do some numbers first, because they're the important bits for siege. So if you look at the raw stats for siege, like the base stats for each of the siege tiers, they're absolutely unique amongst all the other troops, because the base values for attack and the base value for HP are exactly the same, and that's different to every other troop type. So that means that HP and attack have a pretty strong equivalence. So that's the sort of one thing we'll probably come back to a few times. But the thing there is that if we then look at what debuffs and buffs are available in the game, debuffing siege is relatively easy. The siege attack is relatively easy, isn't it? Because that sort of stuff's everywhere. But debuffing siege HP, completely different ballgame. That's something you have to really focus on and work at to get decent siege HP debuffs. So that's why I'm a huge fan of siege HP and siege HP debuffs, because attack is straightforward. You can debuff it very easily. So, let's see if I can get a credit card ready. Absolutely. Siege is kind of unique amongst all the troop types, because if you build it, you have to be able to defend it. You can't use other troop mechanics to kind of hide it or make it stronger. It is what it is. It stands alone. It's very, very simple. And it makes it much easier to understand some of the other troop interactions, because it's literally siege versus siege almost all the time. If you want to build a siege defense, the advice we give our alliance is 2,000 siege HP, 10 million T13 siege, ideally 50% of that in T14s, and you want your siege HP debuff to be about 500 at least. So that sounds a bit enthusiastic, and it is, and it's expensive to build. So again, this comes to Zar's point about free-to-play players and Siege. Siege isn't really the place for a free-to-play player, which sucks, because this game should do more for free-to-play. It should be more accessible, I think. Right, where should we start?
Wonky, sorry, because I think you're touching an important point, because many players ask me this at least every day. If you're a K38, K39 with limited amount of coin to spend in the game, they see some players are successful at defending with siege, and some players are just losing their siege. And to simplify it, I think what you are saying is that before you build any high tier siege, you have to be able to have a minimum.
You have to be able to defend it,
right?
Yeah. So the minimum we recommend is 2,000 siege HP, 500% siege HP debuff, ideally a bit more, and siege attack ideally over 2k, 2.1 would be good. But this is the minimum, and this was the minimum really before K45 dropped. So in some ways, it's the minimum, but you're still going to be vulnerable.
Because there are some buffs you just cannot defend at your level, whatever it is. But it's quite funny to see sometimes, because what many players will see in SVS typically, at least because you have more time, is that they are focusing on the enemy's siege attack, and then they are focusing on their own defense when it comes to siege attack. But what I'm seeing, Wonky, is that too few players are watching how much their debuffs are. I think this is the real key when it comes to siege defense.
No, I think troop count comes into it a lot as well.
Yeah, the
So
mix between
the
mix
I'm
between
just
your
looking at some
tires.
questions. Yeah, I'm just let's look at there's a couple of questions here. So let's get these nailed down quickly. T13 and above are the most important for defense because they have the highest range. They're the things that are going to get hit first, and they're the things that can hit back first. So if you build a T11 based defense, you're going to sit around for a while everybody else hits you, and you don't have the range to hit them. So that's why T11s and T12s are less important. They still have a role because once the battle's been going a few rounds, they'll be able to hit and they'll be able to do some damage. Are they top of the tree? No, not at all. I'm not a huge fan of them on defense. I wouldn't bulk build them for defense. I'd bulk build, or in the past, I'd bulk build T11 for rallies, but even they're getting a bit long in the tooth now for points and so on. That's a completely different discussion. T12 do quite well, but they're food if you don't have big siege to defend them.
Wonky, could you also please explain the difference between T15 siege in defense and offense? Because I think that's also a question many asks.
Okay. Let's keep it simple without going, otherwise we'll spend hours on it. T15 has a very slightly higher range than T12s and T13s, which means they go first.
Speed.
Speed. Is it speed? Sorry.
Yeah, it's
speed.
Yes,
it's speed. That's right. It's like one extra speed, isn't it? That's it. But the range is the same. Just remind me.
correct.
You'll
Yes.
keep me honest on this.
Yes. Range is the same.
So T15 and I believe T16 have their own little world at the beginning, and then T13, T14 get involved. So it's just a way of sort of fixing the order of this stuff. So T15s on attack, typically you just put a layer in because you just want the extra layer to die and protect the siege tiers you've got below that, assuming you're hitting something with big siege and with T15s. If you're hitting something that's T11 down and you've already killed the big siege, then you can actually put in T15s and as an attack layer, and it can work pretty well. On defense, the highest tier siege you've got typically acts as a tank. That's the thing that gets hit first. And then the layers below it will do a lot of the killing. So that's why we tend to get people to build a lot of T13. That's your backstop. That's the thing that, once people have got through your T15s, T14s, they're going to ideally get stuck in your T13s. And that, that protects the rest of your siege because it just works its way top down. I really like T15s. I'm a huge fan of them on defense. They are absolutely tanky. The only problem with them is they're so expensive. But anyway, can you build a good defense without T15s? Yes, you can. It depends on the again, age and stage, who you compete against. For Viper, for example, he'd have a very different view on have you got T15s or not. From my alliance, if you've got T15s, it's amazing. If you've got T14s, yeah, you can still do pretty well.
Yes, and I think this is a very important thing to mention, that if you're a small 5 or 10 billion keep in the range of K40 and below, it's very different than being a K43. And Wonky, you're a K44 right now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
So I think that we mentioned it in the start too, that what you are building have to be decided on what you are able to build also. So So
I mean,
basically,
in our alliance, for example, we have some K40s with 13 mil T13s, and they do pretty well because they've built for it. And then there's a couple that aren't high corners. You can get to sort of 2k siege HP on the wall at K40. You can get to sort of 500-600 HP HP debuff for siege. But you've got to choose the right generals. You've got to really focus on it. It's not something you do sort of, I might just add a little bit here and there. No, it's got to be what you build, and it's got to be your focus. And then it will work.
So I think as like if you're a K40 spending like if you're a whip 17, whip 18, you have to do everything. You are all in on siege, right? I think that's the thing. because when you're a K43 or K44, you can do other defenses besides siege, right?
Yeah, so like, there's always somebody bigger and stronger than you in the game. So
Yeah,
you can,
yeah.
no matter what you build, someone can always knock it down. But you want to be at a point where you can, you can unbubble an SVS and not be absolutely petrified that you're going to lose your siege. Because that's ultimately what's going to happen, isn't it? Somebody's going to come along and go, "Ooh, yummy siege," and eat it.
And
So
guys,
the question. Sorry, hang on. Somebody asked questions about T9010. T9010 aren't that useful on siege defense, but they're very, very nice for eating archers that come in. They're very effective.
Archer
rallies. But at the same time, buffs and debuffs. You've got to debuff ranged HP. Otherwise, they're pretty useless.
Wonky, when it comes to just as a curiosity, because ranged rallies is sometimes a problem if you are all in on as a K40, typically as a siege keep. It's difficult to
range rallies are a problem no matter what, really. They're very strong.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we have discussed earlier, Wonky. Should you focus on, when it comes to debuffs for range rallies, should you focus on HP or defense for archers? I think you've been onto the more defense line.
No, for archer rallies, the primary thing you debuff is range attack.
So yeah,
everything.
So
in all honesty, the most
attack first.
I think even for a siege keep, the most important thing you could debuff is range attack, because it's very hard to defend cabs, and you could add HP to cabs as much as you want. And certainly when you get bigger, it'll be percentage HP. You can focus on that. They're still vulnerable. They're still going to get wiped by a strong rally, no matter how much HP you put in them. They're the weakest. The hardest troop to defend. The best thing you can do is make them take less attack. So from my view, range attack debuff is by far the most important thing.
Yeah, compared to completely different
compared to all of it. For defense. Yeah. For defense, forget siege HP. If you can't defend a range rally, you're dead.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh. And this is also, I think, bringing a point back that this will hugely depend on what you are facing in battlefields, because if you face 90 million cav rallies, it's a completely different situation than if you face 40 million siege rally or archer rally. So yeah, you have to
get PPK and challenge, you get 95 mil and everything. It's great.
So, yeah, and cav rallies are a problem for siege builds, I think.
So
yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't know. I think I would say cav from a siege perspective. The challenge you've got if you go siege is if you're focusing everything on your siege build, you're going to be neglecting everything else. And I fell into that trap as well when I was building mine out. And you have to be, once you've got your siege where you want it to be, you really need to start focusing on rounding yourself out as a keep. So making sure your ranged attack isn't neglected, making sure your ground HP on the wall isn't neglected, stuff like that. There's no magic bullet. You've just got to keep working and pushing all your buffs up. Once you've got the core mechanics for siege in place, then just build everything else up to catch up with it.
And this is hammering home a point also, because I think when it comes to debuffs, whether you are focused on ranged or cav or siege or whatever it might be, 80% of your debuffs will come from whatever equipment you put on your subgenerals, because most of your debuffs will come from subgenerals. So yeah. you can, I mean, you can't choose everyone. You have to focus on one type. If you're not spending a lot of money, you have to just focus your build on one specific type of defense, and you have to keep track of your sub-general debuffs. I think this is a very important thing, because I've talked to a lot of players that don't really have complete track of what equipment they have on their sub-generals. I mean, most K40s around K40 will have 9 sub-generals or more. but many of them I met, they have no idea what type of equipment they have. You have 6 type of equipments on each subgeneral, and you have times 9. You have to keep track of that, or else you have no idea of what you are prioritizing, right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
but I think there's another point. There's a bigger point to be made in debuffs there, which is as you grow as a keep, your debuffs, the need for debuffs changes. So, for example, I'm not debuffing ground explicitly because I don't really care. If I'm going to be grounded, I'm utterly screwed. So why waste time being utterly screwed and dying anyway? I might as well spend those debuffs on trying not to get utterly screwed, for example. And that will be different. So when
Absolutely,
you're
yeah.
a keep that could be grounded, you will care about ground debuffs. But when you're at a point where you're like, well, if I'm being grounded, I'm absolutely screwed. Forget it. Don't waste your time.
Yes,
Focus,
yes, and yeah,
and that will evolve. And
and
what I
yeah,
advise a
and
lot of people to do is don't spec your subgens until you're at a point where you're not going to change them, and that probably happens when you're about 10 to 12 build power, I should think, because then you're at a point where you know you've got to build out for everything. You know you're going to be hit with siege and ranged. That's when you focus on those things.
yes, and yeah, this is a good point. And if you're a trap keep in the 3-4 billion range, and you would care about debuffing ground and archers, obviously. But if you're a 15 billion siege defense keep, you don't care about the ground. That's you just don't care about it. You debuff everything else.
I'm not going to explicitly try and debuff it. I'll still get ground debuffs out of all sorts of things, but I'm not even going to try to go right. I'm going to put Narcissus on the wall or whatever on the sub. He's useless to me because I don't. That's not a debuff I need, you know. And I think as people evolve and they do more rallies than solos, again, your debuffs are more focused on your defense than your offense.
Absolutely.
Thank
I
Okay,
just
guys.
jump in there.
Yeah.
Just want to
Okay.
make a point. Yeah, just very quickly. Regarding something that Wonky said and where he was like, um, you know, as if you're focusing on siege, you're going to be all in. And then once you get to a point, where your siege is good enough, then you have to round out, everything else. I think that's a very good point. It also works the other way around. Okay, if you're a lower player or you're a lower keep and you're focusing on taking all the other stuff, uh, range hits, ground hits, cav hits, that's where you're focused on because that's what people are attacking you with. Best truth is that you're gonna have to forget about siege for a while. That's just the honest truth.
Yeah.
You're just not gonna.
Yeah.
You have to get to the point where you just be like, you know what, siege, yeah, fine, I accept it. Okay, and that's the point that I was at a while ago because I was getting hit with with range attack, ground attack, and I was just like, okay, you know what, I'll focus on that. And then I got to the point where people started hitting me with siege, and I was like, you know what, guys, I give you siege. Okay, you can have that. And then I used to make fun of people like they hit my keep with siege. They'll get positive on the exchange, and then I'll look at them. I'll be like, okay, now what are you gonna do? Hmm? You can't hit me with range. You're gonna die. You can't hit me with ground. You're gonna die. And let's not even talk about calves. So once you get your defense to the point where you are okay with taking all of those stuff, then you start focusing on your siege, which is something I've talked about this. I've talked about this in a video. I am just to give people some practical perspective. Normally, people do flat refines for mounted for the wall general. After thinking about it, I tried it. I went flat. I went mounted and ground flats on my wall general. The idea being, let me show up my mounted as much as I can. Let me show up my ground as much as I can. And then once I had that done, everything else I focused on was range and siege. Everything else I focused on was range and siege. And that's been the focus. So now I keep as I'm getting bigger and is doing better against siege attacks. And I've intentionally not built out my siege so much that, it's a very big problem. But yeah, I mean, I got hit with siege, um, yesterday in SVS, and I went positive against a K43. So yeah, I'm okay with that. And I think that's, everyone with the mindset, you can't do everything at the same time. There has to be a progression to things. You can't see
Absolutely.
Wonky and
Yes,
yeah, you
absolutely.
can't see Wonky and he be like, oh, he's so good with Siege, he's so good. You don't get there overnight. Okay, you don't.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, because
Evony doesn't have a pack that you just buy
pe-
and
yeah,
yeah, you're good with Siege.
people
So
will see Wonky's defense reports as K44 as a K40 and say, okay, I want to do the same. But the thing is that, and I think I touched on it at the start of this event, is that you have to build according to what you spend in this game, because I think this is not often enough repeated, because if you're spending nothing in the game, there's a limited path for you on what you're able to do in this game. If you're spending a lot of money in this game, there's a complete different road for you as to where you are building your keep. So I think this is the most important takeaway. I mean, we have mechanics, we have equations, we have everything. But I mean, I think if you spend very little in the game, you have to, as you say, Akka, you have to specialize in one specific way,
yeah, exactly. I don't
right?
know if yeah, exactly. I don't know if anyone saw I put a post out a few days ago and I was like, if you're free to play or you're a low coiner, focus on your defense. If you are a big player or you coin, focus on your attack. It's that kind of thing. You know what situation you're in, so you know what to focus on. You can aspire to get to a certain point at that time. You can aspire to be taking siege rallies and all of that stuff, but you need to start. You need to start from somewhere. And some people are like, okay, well, why don't I, if I want to get there, why don't I just build like that all the way through? Why don't, if I want to be a siege keep, why don't I just start building from a siege keep from scratch and then move on? Yes, you absolutely can. Okay. But you're going to have to accept the, the problems that come with being a siege keep at a low power. You're just going to have to accept that. And then when you get
Yes,
to the power
absolutely.
where it's good, and you take it good like that.
Absolutely. Guys, time-wise, this event might be getting off in time. Should we be taking in questions from the audience on stage, or anybody want to add something more?
I would just, there's one thing specifically about this that I wanted to add that I don't think has ever gotten brought up too much when it comes to siege defenses. So first of all, I think what Wonky was saying was absolutely right. He has a great siege defense. One of the things that when I was building my keep, everybody was focusing on siege HP debuff, and I was like, okay, is it just because those debuffs are hard to come by? How is that going to help you? Like, for a long time, I didn't understand how that was going to help your siege defense, because really, if you had 50 million layers of siege, for instance, I know that might seem high to some people, but tier 13, tier 14, tier 15, your siege are just going to one-shot people, one-shot the upper layers. The tier 11s, though, like what people do when they do small siege rallies, so like the tier 11s are just going to attack your upper tier siege, and your upper tier siege can't do anything about that. Your upper tier siege is busy dealing with all the layers of tier 15s, tier 14s, tier 13s, tier 12s. They're not going to have a chance to actually directly attack your tier 11s for a while. And I was like, so how does siege HP debuff help you in your defense? Like, it took me a while to actually understand that. Well, after, because I didn't experience it. You could know all the numbers, but not really experience it. It has to do with your siege counterattack, and for the players in here that don't understand counterattack, basically on a very basic scale, if you attack a troop and you don't wipe out that entire layer, those troops attack you, as long as you're within range. If you're not within range, they don't attack you. So your 1,000 archers, archers are a bad idea. 1,000 mounted, they attack ground and they kill 300 of them. Those 300 ground troops will now attack your mounted troops and cause wounds. This is why you'll see wounds on lower tier troops. It's because those were counterattack wounds. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I just want to show something, and I think it's going to be a really interesting thing for people to understand when it comes to siege rallies. Why you joining a siege rally may actually be hurting your team. Okay? So...
Yes, this is great. This is a great point, Didi, because I think teams with low siege buffs doing siege rallies, this is a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just going to share my screen. What I'm sharing is the simulator I made. You can ignore all the numbers that I'm not. I know this is going to look bad. Can everyone see that clearly? I could zoom in a little bit so that people could get a better look at this. Zoom in by 125% because we don't have to look at much of this. I think that's good enough. Can everyone see this well?
We can zoom.
It's not very clear, but if you can zoom a bit, that'll be okay.
How about this? Is this better?
Didi, I can see numbers on the screen. Is that good enough?
Yeah, if you could see the numbers. Okay. I do apologize. I would put this in paint if I could. So this is showing. I made this. This is not the normal battle simulators I shared with everybody. This is a special one that I made specifically for this. This is showing you have tier 11 siege versus tier 14 siege. All right. And what this is basically showing you is if you're tier 11s without getting attacked, they're not getting attacked at all. They're only attacking the tier 14s and they're being protected by all the different layers. And you have 2,000% buffs. The tier 14, the player has 2,000% buffs. And I want to say this is not realistic. You have to think if you had 3,000 buffs, you're going to be down to 1,500. There's going to be flat buffs in here. I'm doing it 2,000 just for everyone to be on the same page. So,
Didi, just to explain, you're saying that both the attacker and defender has about the same buffs, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. But I want you to realize that, and realistically, the attacker in this scenario has more buffs because they probably got debuffed. Their attack is going to be debuffed in half. So in this kind of situation, it is going to be debuffed in half. Anyway, taking a look at this, I just put 10,000 tier 11s just to kind of just show this, right? So you have 10,000 tier 11s versus, it doesn't matter, like this could be 50 million tier 14s. It's just a number. And what I want to show on this scenario is those tier 11s, those 10,000 tier 11s, they're going to kill 2,000 tier 14s, okay? Those 2,000 tier 14s, it's 1967, but let's say 2,000, they're going to counterattack and kill 1,555 of your tier 11s. So what's going on right now is just on counterattack, you are losing 1,555 of your tier 11s. If this battle goes on for, we're going to say...
Derrick here?
Oh, you lost me? Red Wi-Fi. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we
Okay,
can see. Yeah, we can see the screen.
you're
Okay,
back.
we can hear you better.
Yeah,
Okay. Great.
we lost your last minute.
Okay, well, hopefully by doing some more math, I'll kill about half the audience, and that'll give us a little bit more bandwidth. So, getting into this, getting into this.
I can join you. I can join you on that. I've got my spreadsheet ready already. So.
Getting onto this.
Go on.
What I want to show is I made this little thing. If the battle lasted 5 turns, so because your siege, they'll get attacked by ground and mounted after 5 turns. If depending on the layers, I'm not going to get into it too much. But what basically I'm showing is the tier 11s. They killed 7,216 tier 14s. This is the total power exchange, and this is how many points they have in SVS or Battlefield. It depends on what you want. So the tier 11s came out positive on this, not by much, but they came out positive. And this is just a broad example. Tier 11s attacking tier 14s. What I want to show, what I want to show on this is what happens if we were to debuff these tier 11s from 2,000% HP to, let's say, 1,500. So you debuffed them by 500% siege HP. So now, with that loss of HP, the counterattack from the tier 14s are doing more wounds than the actual tier 11s are doing. So your tier 11s, they're attacking tier 14s, okay? So if your buffs are bad, you're attacking the tier 14s, the counter damage alone is going to kill off your tier 11s, and it's going to cause you to lose points. In this case, they're going to be about even in this situation. But what I'm trying to show here is if your buffs are nowhere close to somebody that has really high siege buffs, siege attack, or siege debuffs, defense and HP, it's going to cause your tier 11, your low tier rallies to basically lose on counterattack alone. So it's something that I think a lot of people miss out when you talk about siege. Is this right here? Does anybody have any questions about that? Because I know that was something a little bit difficult. Is counterattack.
I'm pretty sure we have an island in the British area.
All right.
That's good.
That's what I wanted to show.
There's a reason we focus on it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show on that one. I mean, I could also I cut out the thing. I could also show how Big Siege will have a difference in this as well.
But Derrick,
Yeah.
I think what your math is showing is actually what's happening in real life in the game, because I think most bigger teams are dropping T11 siege rallies now in favor of Big Siege
Big Siege, right?
rallies.
That's a different reason, though. That's a different.
Yeah. And Wonky, you can fill in, I'm sure. But what I heard is that if you're doing a T11 rally now, you have to be 3-1 in power exchange in actually to go positive.
Yeah, that's assuming that that's important. In SPS, it's absolutely important. But yeah, so T11s, the points to power ratio of different troop tiers are different. Yeah, look at the thing Derrick's supposed to that. So you can see that T11s, if you kill a T11 troop, you get, just over 1 point for the power you've killed. Whereas if you kill a T13 troop, it's like 0.6. So that's a huge difference in points.
Or is it, I think like everything you said makes sense. From a practical perspective, I did a video a while back on scout reports, and someone asked me, why don't you check the buffs on scout reports and everything like that? I was like, well, because you get to a certain point where they don't really matter. But at the level I'm at now, the only buffs I check on the scout reports are siege buffs. And depending, and I know what my attacking siege buffs are. So depending on what the buffs of the defender has, I'll know whether we can attack them with siege or not. Otherwise, it's just going to be a waste.
Something that I want to say is if you don't have a strong siege march, because it's one of the last generals that you really focus on, and you want to join a siege rally, and your alliance is not capping that siege rally, feel free to send an Archer March with focusing more on tier 12s. Because that's what that's going to do is your tier 14s, tier 13s, or whatever, they're going to be attacked by the siege. Like Wonky was saying, tier 9, tier 10s, even tier 11s and tier 12s, they attack the archers once. So they're going to mow down that top layer. Anytime you do siege rallies against somebody that has anytime you do archer rallies against somebody that has a lot of siege in their keep, expect that all your tier 15s and tier 14s are going to kill nothing. It's going to take them at least 3 turns to even get to the battle. So you're going to see all your high tier siege just destroyed, 0 kills. There's no reason to put giant layers on them if you're doing a rally on somebody that has a lot of siege. But like I said, if you don't have a good siege march, focus on archers and send a lot of tier 12 archers. And other players' archer layers will also help protect you. Glad to see that Discord and Evony are working together with their servers. So the quick thing that I wanted to mention is we talked about this graph. I'm going to put it back up just for everybody to see in the comments. It's just basically saying, hey, this is how many points per kills you get for Battlefield and SVS. They're practically the same. They're just ratioed a little bit differently. One thing that I want you guys to look at here is tier 11s, they will attack tier 4 siege first. Generally speaking, they're going to attack tier 4 siege first. Tier 4 siege are worth quite a bit of points. When you're looking at this like graph, you'll see that per power, tier 4 siege is worth a lot. Also, lower tier siege does not benefit from siege buffs as much as the higher tier siege. So that's another benefit of attacking these tier 4s and below. So that's why people are always making these jokes, like, oh yeah, tier 4 siege, so terrible, and that stuff, because tier 11s will attack them, and they can't counterattack. They also don't attack anything on the first turn because they're not within range of anything. They have to move the full 75 units up the battlefield, and they still don't attack anything. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The tier 5s through tier 8s, all those siege, they sit back in the backlines. They don't move at all because from where they're at, they can reach ground troops. And that's the first units that they attack is ground troops. So they don't move at all. They don't need to. Ground troops move up 350 units. Ground troops move before siege. So the tier 8s to tier 5s, they just sit back. They don't move. They attack ground. Well, if you know this, if you send a siege rally with no ground, if you send just a couple mounted and archers in it, what's going to happen is now instead of attacking tier 4s with your tier 11s, you're going to attack the tier 8s. And the tier 8s are also worth quite a bit of points. And you could eventually get down to the tier 7s and tier 6s, especially if the enemy you're attacking doesn't have a lot of tier 4s. And the reason why I really want to bring this up is something that people don't do very often. It's something that you probably won't be able to get done in Battlefield. You might do it in SVS when you have more time to look at stuff. But that's what happened with this player right here during our SVS. I just want to show his composition real fast. I brought this up on a battle report, and if you look, he has apparently we already killed out his tier 14, so it's kind of stupid at this point. But when I come down here, I look at his tier 8s and I said, dude, this guy has 12 million tier 8s, right? He has 12 million tier 8s. But when I look down at the tier 4s, I said, oh, he only has 1 million tier 4s. Well, this is going to give me no points. These million tier 4s, these million tier 3s. So what I told my group to do is send me just siege layers. Don't send me anything else. Definitely don't send me ground. And you see how we targeted their tier 8s, not their tier 4s. So normally you would think that you'd target tier 4s. Here we see tier 8s are dying. A lot of his other siege are dying because of this as well. Well, if you look at what we sent, I just sent one tier 1 mounted, one tier 1 ranged, mounted, ranged, mounted, ranged. And what these are doing is it's making so that the tier 10s stay back and that the tier 11s and tier 12s stay back, so they don't move forward. So I target specifically the tier 8s with siege. I just put in layers. I wasn't actually doing a lot of damage. It was these other players, but you see that we sent no ground troops, and that way our tier 11s can directly attack those tier 8s. Now, something that you to take account, this guy right here, you see that he got less kills on his tier 11s than this one. This is what I was talking about before. Crescendo up here has higher flat attack. So his tier 11s were killed before Protocol, even if Protocol had higher siege buffs. So that's why Protocol got an extra attack in this battle. And you see, we don't have layers. Like, this means that their mounted and ground troops ended up coming up to us after 3 turns. You see that they got some kills. But I just wanted to show that for people to understand. I have no more room on my friends list, but if you want to send me battle reports, you can send it to add a friend as battle reports, and I'll go ahead and look at it, and eventually I can help you out. Maybe we could do that on stream where people collect their battle reports, and we could look at your battle reports and dissect them. But that's not going to be today, just for everybody else's sake.
And that's a good idea for maybe another event, that we actually go through real life battle reports and we look at them together. That I think that will be maybe a good idea.
Yep.
Maybe we do that. Yeah. And I really want to. I do really hope there is some questions at the end of this event from the audience who want to ask questions.
If you have a question, please raise your hand.
Yeah, please.
Or you can
please.
just type.
Yeah,
or we can
please
answer
raise
that
your
way
hand.
too.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of questions in the audience, and there's no dumb questions. Ask anything, because this is why we have these events. Ask any question.
So actually, Morty asked. He said something about tier 5s, tier 8s. Will they counter ground rallies? And I would not suggest it, but since they do attack ground first, the thing is, remember, siege have a really low attack. Ground has really high defense and HP, which makes it so that your siege are going to do very little damage to those ground. They'll still do damage. They'll probably kill 500,000 ground altogether. But remember, in order to do that, you have to build several 100 million tier 5 through tier 8 siege, which leaves you vulnerable to siege attacks.
I guess that's clear as mud, DD.
Yes.
Okay, guys. Anya, is there a problem with raising hands?
I just opened the request for speaking.
Okay, excellent. Because I want people to ask any question they have, whether they think it's stupid or not. Because we've been going through a lot of things this event, so I do hope there's somebody who will come on stage and ask questions that we can answer wrongfully. I hope.
Okay, Link, I am accepting your request to speak.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Link.
Hey, man. Hey, dude.
Hey,
Hello.
thanks a lot for this. A lot of good information. So my question is, during the last qualifications for Shalons, we were pushing someone for Red Wings, and we tried sending rallies at medium-sized trap accounts, like 3 and 4 billion accounts, where everyone sent layers except for one person, and they were able to clear them. Where on a solo attack they wouldn't have been able to clear them. why is that? Does anybody know the mechanics behind that?
So you're rallying with people just sending layers, right? And then you have one person that sends a real march.
Yes.
So every layer, every individual layer that's in a rally requires one attack. So if the enemy, they have 2 billion tier 1 calves, well, if you have 100 tier 13 ground troops, that 2 billion calves, they're going to waste one entire turn killing those 100 ground. That's like they're going to waste that entire turn. So then they'll waste the entire turn next time killing another 100 ground, another layer. So the more layers you're sending into these rallies, the more that the enemy has to waste turns killing the layers. That's the reason why you see everyone use 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever, 5,000, 10,000 layers on their marches, is because those are wasting turns of the enemy. Something that the reason why you wouldn't want to use one troop only, generally speaking, 1 or 2 troops only, is because that counterattack stuff that I told you guys earlier. If you send 5 tier 1 troops as a layer, those tier 1 troops are going to attack, let's say, a ground troop. Well, that ground troop, its full attack is going to wipe out those 5 troops. So you lose that layer. Without it ever actually being a protection layer. So you have to send at least some, at least 100, 200, 500. And the size of the layers is going to depend on, are you doing a rally? Are you reinforcing someone? Are you attacking like a hospital or a building that has other people's marches in it? Because the size of your layers are going to be beneficial, depending on which one you're doing. It's going to change. But yeah, what you're talking about specifically, adding more layers, and I tell my guys this, you got zeroed? Go ahead and heal like 100 every layer and join the rally. Because at least your layers are going to waste enemies' turns. It could be anything, waste their turns so that the rest of everybody else does well.
Yeah, okay. Does it work as well for defending?
Yes.
Sending.
Yes.
Is there a bigger amount that you should defend? Put in for a defensive layer. If say in Challenge you get zeroed within the first 5 minutes, and you're trying to just help people by reinforcing.
So the counter aspect of what we just talked about that rally. If you put in a march that has thick layers, like Kim Kardashian thick layers inside that march, now you're going to have let's say 50,000, 100,000 archers per layer, something like that. What that's going to happen is when they attack you with their march that probably has only 1,000 per layer or 5,000 per layer, your individual layers are going to eat through their protection layers a lot faster. So that's why, in terms of reinforcing somebody, I want to give them more layers. And this is another reason that this is a little bit slightly off topic, but when I do refines on my gear, some people, they focus specifically on percentages. Some people focus on numbers and stuff like that. But when I do refines on my attacking general gear, I stick with whatever gold I get, whether it's flat or whether it's a percentage, because really flat will help the majority of your troops, and it's going to allow them to take out layers a lot easier. And I would just adjust my troop count per layers depending on how much flat refines I have, and that's going to help with reinforcing somebody taking out layers when people rally them.
Okay, thanks a lot.
It's an interesting approach, but I think once you get up into the much higher buff levels, you'll find that probably the flats will be much less useful.
I'm just going to share another picture, and this is now we're going to be talking about flats versus percentages, and I knew it was going to be. I'm saying this is my opinion, guys. You guys do whatever you want.
Actually, I got one quick question. So, Derrick, you had said something about a siege rally, people hurting versus helping. Where if their buffs are lower, would it be better that they send just layers instead of a full siege march?
Yeah, no,
to help with that.
the, the battle report that you saw where I just sent layers is because the other two guys had better buffs than me. So so my tier 14s and tier 13s and tier 12s, that was just to keep their troops alive. And when we're doing low tier siege rallies, I tell everyone, maximize your tier 11s. All the troops above that, just send like 10,000. Really, like 5,000 probably would work. And this is small siege. The reason why I say that is because they'll survive traps, they'll survive layers. Because the other thing is, remember, the enemy, if they have tier 14s reinforcing them, if they're just small layers, they're going to attack first too. So be careful about that. That's another thing to keep in mind. And also, you want to be able to take out the archer tower. Something that I didn't mention is the archer tower is your attacking siege first priority. Is it attacks the archer tower? So you'll see like, oh, my siege didn't get any kills, and I don't know why it didn't. It's because your siege probably attacked the archer tower, and then when the enemy went again, they killed off your siege. So it's difficult to read those battle reports unless you have that prior knowledge. Now, sorry, if that answers your question, I'll go to the flat.
No, that answers everything. Thank you guys so much. Great job, everyone. Again, thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Link.
you, Link. We have Whoopenbok next. Hello, Whoop.
Hey, Whoop.
Ooh.
Whoop.
Hello, long time
Whoop,
listener,
whoop.
first time caller.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
So given the, of course, I'm going to ask about Siege. Given the mechanics of how that's working, if you're an R5 or someone that's trying to set the strategy and tone for your alliance, what's the takeaway? Like, when I go back, what should I recommend to my teammates? Like, hey, this is how we're going to set siege rallies from now on. Some of the things that I noticed in the past was when, because of the limited amount of presets that people had, we would just have a siege rally preset. And what ended up happening was a mixture of T13 from some players, T11 from others. And there was a huge point drag that was happening, obviously, because the 13s would get wiped and then the 11s would come into range, then they would get wiped instead of having kind of a unified attack. So what are some of the recommendations for the people in the audience? Like, hey, we're going to go back to the Alliance, and here's how we're going to reconfigure the way we do siege attacks.
I'm sure others can answer because Wonky is a much bigger player than me, so it's going to really depend on what your size of your alliance is. My thing is if you have enough presets, a lot of people will have a big siege, small siege preset. That helps where you do that. A lot of players have a preset where it's just layers, and if you're quick enough, you can go through there and just add your tier 11s or tier 13s, tier 14s, something like that. The thing to take away is let your players know if they're going really heavy on their top tier siege and they have really high buffs, that's going to just give the enemy points, especially if the enemy has a lot of tier 13s, tier 14s, and tier 15s. And Wonky, I'm sure, sees this all the time when he looks at his battle reports and he sees, oh, this guy sent 1 million tier 15s and got no kills with them. They just got wiped out. So I think having them understand the base mechanics, I think that helps. I don't want to give everybody like, hey, this is what you should do, because I just say this is how the game works. Figure out your better strategy, and I'd like to hear what the other people on the panel have to say about it.
Just wanna give you some quick advice, and then I'll hand over to Wonky. I don't know what size your alliance is, but my alliance, it's not been that long since we started doing siege. So basically, what I did was I asked everyone who could do siege, and people came. So the way we started was, out of everyone in the alliance, we have 6 people that can do siege. So those 6 people develop for siege. So they develop their generals, they do their presets, they do everything. After those 6 people are in, anyone else, if you can join, fine. If not, when you get to the point where you can join in, then you can join in for siege. But then everyone else, join in for range rallies, mounted, that kind of stuff. So something you could do is actually pick the people in your alliance that are geared up to do siege, and then you run with that until other people can catch up. And I think one thing for the presets, I mentioned this in a video. I usually have because I don't have that many presets, so I usually have one preset set on small siege. And what I do is I have simple numbers that I remember. So I know, for example, my T14 will be 400, my T13 will be 800, my T12 will be 300. And anytime I need to do big siege, I just go in, plug those numbers in quickly, and then send the march. So that's, it's not ideal, but that's also another way you can deal with the preset problem. Okay, Wonky.
Okay.
Over to
So,
you, man.
Ruth, we
Yeah.
going to do some smack talk.
Huh? What?
Me and Roop usually do some smack talk, you see.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
come on,
I have
Roop.
a man crush on Wonky.
Yeah, come on. You muted and you can't even smack. Come on. Anyway, enough of that. So my advice for Whoop is when you're sending siege rallies at me, fill them with T4 siege.
That did not work.
Okay, so
it's-
there's a lot of layers to that question. So you've typically got a few different types of players. You've got the players who are free to play, who, siege is probably the last march they work on. They've got to keep where they can't build bullets because they can't defend them. And then you've kind of got the next layer up where, people have built siege, they've got slightly better buffs, but again, they can't build more than a couple of bullets or they become a liability. And then you tend to get to the bigger players where they can build siege, they can defend them. There's a spectrum between them. So as an alliance, you've got to cater for all of those. So typically, if you're in this, if you look at some of the rallies and some, like Viper's calling out big siege and you see, lots of keep sending T13s, that's going to be very difficult for most alliances to do because they're just not in a position where everybody has a T13 march and everybody can send multiples or whatever. So the question is, how do you balance that? Now, we've tried to simplify things a lot. We try not to do T11s as much as possible because just the points exchange is horrible. And when you've got bad buffs, it's very hard to get 3-to-1 ratio. So we tend to try and go for bigger siege, but at the same time, small siege is cheap to build, easy to heal. So if a player's got T11s and they're sending T11s, I'll take that because, in the real world, you can't have, the perfect everybody sending the same march. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the smaller keeps with the lower buffs, again, you could get them sending layers that might be a bit demoralizing for them as a player, but from an alliance perspective, it's probably a win. But yeah, you wanting to talk march composition as well, Whoop? I don't know how deep you want to go into the rabbit hole.
No, it's more of for the people in the audience, like I understand the mechanics now. Now, how do I go back to my alliance and what's the bridge between I know how it works, here's what we do with that knowledge. You know what I mean? Like what are some of the things that let's say they're all our fives in the room. Like what do they go back and like what's some practical applications of it really? Because I agree entirely with the mechanics, but I just want to see if we can speak to what should people do with that knowledge now.
It's so contextually dependent, isn't it?
Well, I mean, like I can give a few examples of what we did in PPK after a few of us listened to Derrick and in the past. Is one of the observations we had about small siege is it tends to go point or power negative a lot, but it doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile because on its own, it may. We had a lot of drag, like we had a lot of low power, low attack buff keeps doing T11. They were probably getting counterattacked harder than they were attacking. But with enough volume in a rally, we were still able to successfully kill all of the big siege of the keep we were attacking. We lost the exchange, But when we followed up with a big siege afterwards, that one was so much more positive now that all the keep big siege was out of the way, that it made it worthwhile. The loss on the small siege was way offset by the gains on the follow-up big siege, right? And so what we were having issues with, though, is that if they're not clearly defined as separate, big and small siege, if I just said a siege rally, people would join with either their T13 or their T11 march, and the mixture rally that we were sending was terrible because it accomplished no goals.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was one of the practical takeaways that we took is, hey, if you don't have enough presets to have a separate T13 and T11 preset, don't make a T11 preset, period. Because when it mixes with the big siege rally, it goes way, way wrong. So that's just a practical thing that we did with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think the other thing about T11s is you can't take that approach in SBS because you don't necessarily have the guarantee of the follow-on hit.
One of the things that you mentioned that I just wanted to talk about with the sieges, you're asking, okay, now that we know this, what are we going to do about it? I mean, I'm showing you examples. You can come up with your own strategies, and that's what I hope people do. You saying that, hey, we killed off their top tier siege, and then we used a big siege rally. That's exactly what you do. You once their tier 14s are done for, and they have little or just no tier 13s. When you do a big siege rally, your tier 13 above attack tier 12s. They don't get counterattacked because they're out of range. The tier 12s have lower range, so they can't counterattack your big siege. And then you just do so much more damage, and you just destroy their entire siege line, like go all the way down, and even probably do some damage on the archers. Whether or not you'll come positive doing siege rallies on archers depends on buffs, but I think that is the right way to go. And once they're siege are dead, then you have to figure out what are the buffs, what is the best course of action to go through after that. Like Wonky was saying, mounted is another good choice. So it really depends. Do we have any more other questions? I'm answering Emerald's question. They were saying that they have a mounted tier 1 mounted trap keep, and they're saying ground is really hurting them. What I'll tell you is when I see let's say you have a tier 1 mounted keep, trap, whatever people want to call it, the defense, and usually we talk about, oh, how do you break this? How do you fight these things? I'll tell you the things I see people making mistakes when they're building these keeps. One is they just don't have enough mounted, or they don't have the right buffs for those mounted. So in your case, Emerald, if you're having issues with ground, it's probably because you don't have enough mounted troops to kill off those ground. Also, you want to have your layers big enough to kill the enemy layers. If you only have 1,000 of every layer of archers and siege and stuff like that, the only thing that's going to be killing layers are your tier 1 mounted. So you want to have extra layers. I tell people, well, build archers. That way you can join rallies. The problem with that, though, is until you have a lot of archers, your archers are going to be taking damage from counterattack wounds from enemy archers. Because after the enemy archers, after you kill the enemy mounted troops, your archers don't want to deal with anything with ground. They say, no, I don't want to touch the ground. So they move closer to the enemy and start attacking the archers. And then you get counter wounds from the archers. And the enemy archers are going to be very strong because it's an archer general and stuff like that. So you're going to have to be careful about that. You'll get counter wounds. The way to counter that is, one, having better archer buffs on your wall. I'm not saying prioritize archer HP or whatever, but having better archer buffs will have you have less counter wounds. But what I usually just tell people is, if you have a lot of archer attack and you make thick archer layers, like you just make a, let's say a 8 million, 10 million tier 12 archer layer, that's going to one-shot a lot of players' archers, so you won't receive as many counterattacks. So those are some things that you'll see on your tier 1 defense.
Yeah, there's one question in chat that has come up quite a few times, and I just dropped a question to it and dropped an answer to it. People asking which is better for T11 siege in terms of refines, flats or percentages. I've I've covered this before. I don't want us to go too much into the detail unless you guys want me to whip out the spreadsheet. But my opinion is for T11 siege, flats are better. And that's across attack, defense, and HP. For big siege, it's different. So yeah.
Yeah, I think with Siege it's going to be a little different because Siege operates quite differently. I think the thing I was just trying to tell them is if you have a attacking march or whatever, the reason I don't mind having flat refines is flat refines are so difficult to obtain. And now it's making it so that my tier 1 archers, tier 2 archers, tier 3 archers are able to take out the enemy layers. So when you rally somebody, so you're rallying somebody, well, they're going to probably get a reinforcement or two. And those reinforcements, let's say I'm doing an archer rally on someone, they're going to get ground reinforcements. Well, those ground reinforcements, they're going to have layers mounted. Let's say, whether it's 10, 5,000, it doesn't matter. Like, let's say their layers are 1,000, something you see very commonly, 1,000. If my tier 11 and below archers, those layers, if I make them a little bit thicker, make them about 50,000 layers or 20, 10, whatever, 50,000 layers. Now those can take out the enemy layers, so we waste less turns. And also they're still going to do quite a bit of damage. Having that flat attack is going to be doing quite a bit of damage to the enemies mounted. And guess what? You're losing less points, and they're going to be easier to heal because they're lower tier troops. So I base my march setup based on how much my flat and percent refines are. All right, go ahead. We got Cherry Bomb.
Oh, hey, how are you guys?
Hey, Cherry Bomb.
Hey.
Good. How you doing?
Good, good. I'm a little confused, which it happens. And anyway, so a couple of the things that you said aren't really jiving with what I've been told. I had my wall general that was set up as an arch with a percentage attack for just basic rallying. I converted over to a trap account, and I was told that I had to scrap all of my refines and move over to flat mounted. Now I'm not sure because I'm hearing you guys saying that I should have some arch in there. Is it how? Am I doing something wrong?
This is for your wall general?
That's correct. Yeah.
How big are you? How big
Excuse
are
me?
you? How much power do you have? So we have an understanding of where this is going.
Yeah, let me look. I'm not even sure at this point. I'm at 4.6 billion.
Okay.
Very little.
That's big to some players. I mean, that's
little guy.
It's okay. I'm 4.8, so no problem.
my thing is when I'm building my defense, and I'm a little bit more flexible. I'm not making a pure tier 1 or not making pure ground trap or mounted trap. And some people have archer traps, which I'd like to see battle reports on because I want to see how that actually interacts. But if you were to make it just pure 1, you'd go with all mounted or you'd go with all ground. But I'm guessing if you're a 4.6 billion power player, well, what are your layers? What do your layers look like of archers and stuff like that?
Well, my layers are looking a little confused at this point because I'm in the process of kind of. I'm a little bit of a hybrid because I do attack.
Right.
So that's why it's a little difficult for me. But what I'm trying to do is educate my people on how to build their traps because I've inherited some folks that haven't had much training, and I just want to be clear on the education. They're small, and at this stage of the game, they should be going trap because that way they'll be able to get some enjoyment when they play.
So
rather than coining like a crazy people.
Here's what I'll tell you. For each individual person, it is difficult to know their needs on their refines without looking especially at their layers. And I hate telling people I met this. I saw this one guy. He's like, "What should I do?" And I saw that he had 10 million tier 13 mounted, tier 14 mounted, a bunch of tier 15 mounted. I was like, I can't help you because you're trying to do a flat. You're trying to do this tier 1, trap with like this kind of scenario where you can't ghost your mounted. So this is, if you want specific help, you can send me a battle report. I can try to specifically help your specific case. But what I would suggest is when you're refining for your defense, if you are going to be a hybrid,
Right.
go with whatever flats you get. So flat HP, flat attack. I like them both. If you're not going for siege, because siege is going to be maybe a little bit different. But if you have flat ground, flat mounted, both of those will help protect you. Attack. Flat attack is going to make it so your lower tier archers do a lot of damage. Flat attack for your mounted, make it so your mounted do damage. Same thing with ground. I wouldn't.
Okay.
If you're
All right,
trying,
yeah.
if you're trying to be hybrid, then you might want to spread it around a little bit so your lower tier troops can do damage. But if you're going specifically for a tier 1 mounted defense, then you generally want to put more emphasis on those mounted troops because you're going to have a lot more of them. So
All right, yeah, because we're right now. I've got about 500,000 T1s. I mean 500 million. I'm sorry,
okay,
T1s. But I'm slightly top heavy with troops at the T14 area and down. And everything else is probably like a million on down. I've got little groupings. Where I got stuck, and I ended up with a little bit more.
what I suggest for all the other layers,
Yeah.
the middle layers, the waist, if you will, of your march, of your defense, you want enough troops to kill layers. They don't need to do damage. That's what your tier 1s and tier 12s and above are for. Those are for damage. You want your middle tier troops to have enough to kill layers when people rally you and or
Right.
march on you, and also to go into your marches and rallies when you join. I build a lot of archers because I want to join marches. Oh, you're doing a mountain march? My mounted are dead. I'm going to join with archers. Oh, you're doing a siege march? My siege are dead. I'm joining with archers. Generally, it's going to help more than it's going to hurt, unless they have no more mounted or archers left. Because after all the mounted are dead, your archers are going to start killing their archers. So
I should have it. So I should have at least as much as a full march
for what?
for at each level of the
Well, layers.
each level. Yeah, on your layers.
You should have a couple. So I mean, anything more than 1 million, unless you're a really big keep, might be too much in my opinion. That's,
All right, because I've got 3 million, 2 million. I'm just looking down the list here.
Okay.
I'm pretty much that's where I'm at.
Well, I think if you
can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cherry Bomb.
Yeah.
I've been in your exact same in the situation that you explained.
Yes.
When I started off with my wall general, I had percentage refines.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I've switched them over to flats.
Okay.
And what I will tell you is that percentage refines work, provided. Now here's the caveat here. Percentage refines work provided you can match the buffs of the person attacking you.
Okay.
So when the cap was K35, right? I had percentage refines. And that was okay because I was within, let's say, 200 to 300 buffs range with the people that were attacking. And percentage refines worked well. So if the people that are normally attacking you, you know what buffs they are, and you can match that on defense. Percentage refines work.
Okay.
Okay. When
Cool.
they don't work is when the people are out buffing you. Okay. When you have 1,500 on defense, and the person that is attacking you has over 3,000.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Those kind of scenarios.
Mhm.
If that's the kind of situation that you normally get, then it's better for you to switch to flat refine.
Okay.
And
Well,
when you switch
Yeah.
to flat refines, yeah, and you have layers to support those refines. From what you're telling me now, or from what you've told us, and I think Derrick was also, touched on this as well. I
Mhm.
think what you have is okay for now. Okay,
Okay.
so I wouldn't focus so much on the layers. I would focus more on your refines. Get
Okay.
them
All right.
done. Get them done, and you need laser focus on this. Okay, you
Yep.
can't have like 2 mounted here, 3 mounted there, 1 mounted. No, decide what you're going with. Are you going with mounted? Are you going with ground? Do you want to be crazy like me and go with mixed? And then once you've done that, do your refines.
Okay.
Do your refines on the wall general. Do the refines on your dragon.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Yeah, I'm pretty good
and
with a lot of that
yeah,
stuff. The wall general
yeah,
is
and I
the
think
one that hurts the most because I had to actually scrap it completely. And oh my God, she was beautiful
yeah,
before I had to
yeah,
completely rip it all out.
well,
yeah. I had pretty much same thing, and it cost me over 4 million gems to
Yeah, I
redo
believe
everything.
you. Yes, I've been there.
I mean, if
Yeah, Derrick, on. Yeah,
what I was gonna say is, if we want to, after this, after we wrap up this, call, we could make it so that if anybody wants to stay and send me battle reports, and I can just give you quick, you know, hey, this is what I think you should do, and people could stay in the call and see what I'm offering for each individual person. I can do that for a little bit after all this is done. So, uh, just an idea if people are interested in that.
That would be awesome. I just got out of we all got out of challenge, and I for some reason I'm clobbering people like with huge rallies, and I don't know why. You know, it's not making sense to me. And but I have to run, so unfortunately I'm going to miss this opportunity.
Oh, it's all right. Well, thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you for your help. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think we have someone
Okay,
else.
guys. I think we are everybody is on overtime. Event has been fairly a lot of interesting questions and debates. And let's be honest, guys, some of the topics we discussed today are debates because they don't necessarily have a right answer. We probably should do some follow-up event. I suggest everybody suggest in C5 if there is some special, mechanics or things you want to see in an event. I guess. And I want to
Sure.
thank you. Yeah, and I want to thank you to Derrick and to Wonky and Akka for joining us on C5 stage.
Thank you so much, guys. And
Yeah,
please note one thing:
thank you.
everybody has a
Thank you for
different
having me.
kind of spin, a different kind of build. And what was talked about here was how generally things work. They might not work for you because you have a different level of spending or a different troop composition. So everything that was suggested here, you
Are we
have
still on?
to build it. Yes, we are. So you have to build it according to your what
The whole
you
thing,
can do best.
went quiet.
but absolutely, I totally agree with you, Anya. As I said at the start of this event, whatever mechanics and advice or whatever you get, you have to take into account your spending level and whatever you're able to build yourself. So this is, I think, is the takeaway from this event. Derrick, Wonky, or Akka, some last words before we close the event. Maybe some of us will hang out in C5 or on other Discords, of course. But I mean, we might do a follow-up event, I think.
The only thing that I'm going to say is I'll stick around answering individuals' questions, because I know Akka and some other players. Our friends list is full in the game. We get messages all the time. Hey, how can I fix my keep? What do you have some advice on? Which we're both happy to help. It is just a bit draining. Remember, there's 300 people that you can have on your friends list, and I'm deleting people constantly to help others with their questions, which I'm happy to do. But as Anya has pointed out before, it takes sometimes takes me 2 or 3 weeks to respond. So I'm going to stick around so I can help people with their questions, so you could help teach your teammates some mechanics and help everybody out.
Absolutely, Derrick. Appreciate very much your efforts, and as you say, I think for most players, I think the most valuable thing you can do is to hang out in the Discord and ask multiple people questions about your own build and get specific advice for you. I want to thank everybody who has joined the stage today, and good luck for what's remaining in SVS, and to those who's being zeroed. New days are coming. New days are coming, for sure. Akka, I'm sure you will be posting new content on your YouTube channel.
Oh yeah. I've got. In fact, that's actually the reason why I can't stay, because I've got tons of videos that are backed up and I need to work on. Just to give you guys, some just some highlights about some of the stuff that is coming up. Okay, I had another collab video. I'm gonna try and get that out this week. This time I am covering a topic that very few people have covered. Okay, and it's a topic on the topic is how to be a good rally setter. I don't think there are any videos, or I don't think anyone has really covered that. And it's okay. Because we, a lot of us playing All Stars, a lot of us playing Challenge, and it's like, okay, what do you need to do to be a good rally setter? So,
Akka, you have any? Do you want to disclose any special guest stars, or is that for future?
Yes, I can disclose this topic. I actually sat down with Viper, and we had a long talk about this. And he goes into what he thinks is necessary for you to be a good rally setter. So I think that will be very insightful, information for a lot of people.
Okay, sounds excellent. As we all know, Viper is some of the best setters in the game, so that's going to be very interesting, Akka. And thank you to Didi, and thank you to Wonky, and thank you to the rest of the team, Anya, on C5. And with this, I think we're closing the event and suggest new events. And I think maybe we get the team together again for other topics. So thank you, guys, and a good SVS for the few hours left.